Teachers, what's the worst thing a kid brought for show and tell? Had a kid aged 6 to 7 who had a lot going on, but part of it was that he was a compulsive liar with absolutely no sense of when a lie was so poorly constructed that everyone would know. Every single day he would say he had something for show and tell. Most days we didn't have time for his show and tell, but every so often we kind of had to let him have a go. He'd stand up, ready to do his show and tell, then wander over to my desk, browse for a minute, pick up the most random crap, a post-it note, a sharpener, once it was the custom well-done stamp that actually had my name on it, and then say some poorly constructed story about how he found it in Africa when he went there for tea yesterday with his auntie or some such. He'd get really upset if he realized nobody believed him, though even at that age, most of the kids had the tact, or gill ability, to just smile and nod. There was a fella I got to know after moving to a new city and school who lied like this, except he was in 9th grade. Claimed his dad was in the CIA and dropped him off via helicopter at school every so often. He actually walked to school every day. If you asked him about his home life, he'd always say something like, "It's top secret info, can't talk about it." I eventually found out that his dad went AWOL after he was born and his mom died when he was in 3rd grade. Afterward, he got bounced around foster homes. He was genuinely a nice guy beneath it all, and he was naturally funny without the crazy lies. He never said anything mean about anyone, or lied about anyone except his own self. I think he did it to make his home life appear better than what it actually was. Not bad, not normal, but extraordinarily awesome. He moved the next year, I presume to another foster family. I can only hope he found legit happiness. In not a teacher, but as an elementary school kid, not anymore LOL, we were supposed to bring toy animals from home and tell why we picked or liked that animal. Most kids brought stuffed animals or action figures, but this one madland of a girl brought a real-life bearded dragon. She brought it in a plastic bag and just whipped it out and flopped it on the table when it was her turn. The teacher, female and usually very chill, freaked out and called her parents to come get the beast. A few minutes later her dad, Russian, steps into the room and you could see in his face that he didn't understand what the problem was with the bearded dragon. The teacher freaked out again and talked to him how it could have gone on a rampage and could have bitten someone, and how it's animal cruelty to transport a live animal in a regular one-time use plastic bag. The dad realized that she was super scared and overreacting, so he just said, "Excuse me madam," with a thick Russian accent, took the bag and walked out. The whole time his face didn't show any emotion at all, as if that type of stuff happens to him all day. The girl was the hero of the day and she somehow didn't get into any trouble backos it actually was her dad's idea. BTW, I'm German, so PLS excuse any spelling mistakes, smiley face. I'm late to the party and this wasn't show and tell, but I think this fits. It's one of my best first-year teaching stories. I was teaching kindergarten at the time and my class was a hot mess with behaviors. One of my frequent flyer girls was repeatedly going to her backpack and a couple of other girls were joining her in a huddle at the back of the room. After calling them back to reading rotations a couple times, I quietly walked up behind the group and asked, "Jamantha asterisk, what ya got in your backpack?" Well, the other two girls looked shocked and Jamantha burst into tears, which was a terrible sign. I shoo the others away and ask a random pare who happened to be helping, normally I had no other adults in the room, to read something on the carpet while I asked this girl WTF was going on. She said her pet bunny in her backpack and I asked, foolishly hoping, like, a stuffed bunny? No. A real bunny. So I look inside and lo and behold, she has a baby rabbit in her backpack. So I pick up the bag, take her arm and say, "Okay hun, let's get this to the office." She is sobbing and yelling that they're going to take her bunny away and I say if it's really her pet her mom will put it back in its pen at home. Spoiler alert, totally not her pet. Well, I walk into the office and announce there is a baby rabbit in the backpack I'm holding, and when we look in again, it is fucking dead. A dead wild baby rabbit. And at this point we don't know if it went into the backpack alive and died on the way to school, or if she killed it, or it was already dead, and either way it's all terrible. So we have to call animal control and parents and bring in every little girl who touched it, because it was a wild animal and rabbits have all kinds of diseases. And we had to clear my classroom and spend the afternoon in the library finishing assessments because facilities needed to come and check my classroom for fleas and shit. My mom was a teacher. I didn't live with her, but I would occasionally go help her move stuff around, hang stuff up, clean. Just help with her room. Occasionally, I'd bring a friend or two. We were in high school. My sister, 6, attended the school that our mother taught at. One day my mom called and asked if I'd come by with the 2 friends that I usually brought. We showed up about 20 minutes later. Without explaining, my mother sent us to my sister's classroom. We knocked, walked in, and my sister yelled, "My show and tell is here. These are my brothers. They are funny. I am so lucky to be friends with these 2 guys to this day." Without hesitation, they started an age-appropriate Three Stooges routine. One climbed onto the other's shoulders. They juggled school supplies. Pretended to trip each other. Made funny noises. I barely played a role. My sister's class was continuous roar of laughter. Even the teacher was crying. She asked us to stop/leave because she didn't want kids passing out from laughing. I'll never forget my sister's little face, looking so proud. Haha. Sorry for straying the prompt. But that's the only show and tell I can remember. 4th grade, I once got in trouble for bringing 2 bayonets and a pistol, no bullets, to show and tell. One bayonet was from WW1 and the pistol and other bayonet were from WW2. I had okayed them with the teacher beforehand and my parents knew about it, but alas, there was a substitute teacher that day. What 4th grade boy wouldn't think those would be awesome show and tell items? This was the same substitute that requested a parent-teacher conference about how I was influencing his peers by talking about Satanism. My dad politely told her that I was reading The Lord of the Rings at the time, mid-90s. Those weren't spells, they were elven script. He's not drawing violent images, he's drawing Helm's Deep. If you were familiar with English literature, you would encourage him to read glitter instead of the garbage you have on the preferred reading list. Some goosebumps or anamorph stuff. These are my aunt's stories, but she teaches at an elementary school in Detroit. Just shows you what types of parents are in this world. The worst thing ever brought was a little baggie of white powder. The student said her daddy makes lots of little baggies with it. Well, turns out it was cocaine. My aunt had the administration talk with her and they think the mom gave it to her so they would bust the dad. Anyways, there was nothing the school could do but try and have a parent-teacher meeting, but 98% of the parents never show up. The runner-up was a few years earlier or later, I'm not sure of the timeline exactly. This little boy wanted to show off his dance moves. He learned these moves from his mom at home. He basically started humping and grinding on table in the classroom. Well, my aunt quickly stopped that, and once again involved the administration. The mom actually picked up the phone, and when they asked her where he would learn his dance moves, she admitted he would watch her, as she would sexually dance on numerous appliances and pieces of furniture. She admitted she was an adult entertainer for some club and she didn't see anything wrong with the dancing. This next one wasn't technically show and tell, but he might have decided to show it off. Most of her kids ride the bus to school, and in the winter everything is frozen over and super cold. Well, this one kid found a Tootsie Roll at the bus stop and put it in his pocket to save it for later. Well, when class started, my aunt smelled something and was looking around for what it was. She narrowed it down to that one student and asked him if he had anything in his pockets. Well, he pulled out his Tootsie Roll and it was dripping out of his hands. The Tootsie Roll was most like dog poop. LOL. So I was in kindergarten. My mom used to call my aunt or uncle to come over and babysit me every once in a while. This was the 70s, so they were the really cool aunt and uncle since they were significantly younger than my mom. They were always more than willing to play out with me on the swing set or in the sandbox. They would smoke cigarettes that smelled really funny. One day while we were playing and they were smoking their smelly cigarettes, I noticed a beret on it with really pretty fluffy white feathers. I wanted it so bad. My aunt gave it to me and put it in my hair. I loved it. It was like no other beret I had ever seen. I brought with me to school the next day for show and tell. The teacher asked if she could see it, so I showed it to her. When my mom came to pick me up from school, the teacher wanted to talk to her for a minute. So she told me to play outside and wait for her, so I did. When we got in the car, my mom asked me, "Do you know what a roach clip is?" I was like, "I don't know." She said, "Where did you get that beret from?" I said, "Auntie V gave it to me." She just said, "I knew it. Okay, Auntie V and Uncle M will not be babysitting you anymore." I was absolutely devastated. Not a show and tell but fits. I am a high school teacher, and one day in a classroom full of seniors I am lecturing when I am interrupted by a soft muffled meep. I turn to my left thinking what was that, and see nothing but blank stares from my students. From the other side of the room I hear a slightly higher pitched meep. I knew something was going on and so asked the kids what was up. Two girls on opposite sides of the room reluctantly open their jackets and out stumble baby ducklings onto their desks. The girls looked terrified, knowing they were going to get in trouble. They had bought them at lunch from the Tractor Supply store. They were not expecting a 40-year-old bearded man to shut down the class, clear the desks out, and allow us all to sit in a circle and watch the baby ducks. There was no frickin' way I was going to pass up playing with baby ducks. We would set them on other sides of the room and they would call until they met up to each other in the middle. The kids won't remember the history lesson we started that day, but they will always remember the time the teacher approved of the ducklings in class. The two ducks lived long healthy lives at one of the girls' farms. I don't think I need to say this, but if you buy a baby animal, make sure you have long-term plan. I am not a teacher, but this happened when my sister was in the second or third level of pre-basic school, 3 to 5 years old, and I was able to witness this. My sister stopped eating some things. She did not eat potatoes, carbohydrates. She wanted everything without salt or sugar, steamed, and if she did not eat better. We went to the doctor and there were days that he improved and others that he did not. One day I had to go to her class for reasons outside the subject. Here things get ugly. It was a group of children beating and insulting a fat girl for problems not related to food. While the girl was crying, a boy said, "Look at this disgusting so, she's fat and nobody loves fat people. If they don't want people to hate them, they should lose weight, not eat." And gave internet diets and exercise routines out of his age. I made a complaint to the teachers about this. The school did not know about it. There was monitoring of the nutrition of the children. The vast majority had malnutrition and the origin was this boy. The fat girl was changed schools after meeting with the boy's parents and seeing that what the boy said was taught by the parents. We also decided to leave that place. What the child brought to school was a set of ideas that generated a nutritional crisis in junior grades. When I was in second grade, my mom somehow came into the possession of a FRSHLY severed shark's head. I was 8, so I didn't really care about that, just that show and tell was the next day. I asked my mom if I could bring said shark head to school and she surprisingly said yes. I brought the severed shark head to class in a plastic grocery bag in my backpack. Show and tell was early in the morning, so when the time came I went to my locker and brought it in. Everyone thought it was super cool and we got to pass it around. After show and tell I put the shark head back in my locker without a second thought. It's worth mentioning that we were toward the end of the school year at this point, around May or June, so it was quite warm out and our school didn't have air conditioning. When I came back to my locker at the end of the day, the smell of hot, rotting shark head had permeated the entire hallway. The smell was truly undescribable. The worst part was all of our stuff was in the locker, and the closer we got the worse the smell was. I just plugged my nose and wrapped it up as tight as I could in the grocery bag and ran out of school before people knew it was my fault. Promptly threw it away in the grocery store dumpster across the street before walking home. Not a teacher and wasn't show and tell, but once in elementary school I brought my dog to school for an essay assignment where you got extra credit for bringing in the subject matter. My teacher was not happy. Another time in 7th grade my friend and I were lab partners and we set up a frog race to see which two different types of frogs would reach the finish line first. Unfortunately, we were only able to find two types of poisonous frogs. Searched every pet store in the county, somehow there was a frog shortage. Needless to say, the experiment did not go as planned and the frogs escaped from the racetrack and were jumping all over the classroom. Kids were freaking out and my teacher was laughing so hard he was crying while watching two 13-year-old girls scramble with rubber gloves to catch the frogs before anyone touched them and got sick. One frog you had to ingest the poison, the other was through touch, so it was a gamble. Luckily for us he didn't fail us and instead had us change the name of our experiment to Girls vs Frogs, which is faster. The frogs won and we got a B. He deducted a couple points for the initial escape. I remember when I was about 7 or so. I grew up in a big sportsman community, in a very small town. My dad had given me a gift for my birthday that week and I was so proud of it. I loved it very much, and still cherish it today. Later that week it was Friday and I forgot that I was supposed to bring something for show and tell. Both my parents were already gone for work, my sister had already left for her school, and the bus was already pulling up outside and picking up the neighborhood kids. So I immediately thought of my new favorite gift and grabbed it to bring it to school. I know what some of you are thinking, and you're right. I brought my brand new shotgun to school. School shootings really weren't something that was in the public eye yet. This was the mid-80s, so luckily my teacher was super cool and didn't make a big deal out of it. She just took the gun, told me they can't allow things like that in school, and said she would hang onto it until my parents could come and get it. My parents were, understandably, mortified. Looking back now, I am too. But to my little 7-year-old brain, it was just a really special gift my father had given me for us to go hunting with and spend time together. I was very proud of it. This reminded me of a story my mother told me, when she was a primary school teacher, and she was the one that brought the worst thing into class. The school she taught in, UK, was built on the site of an ancient monastery, and during some groundworks, the builders uncovered a skull. My mother thought that it would be a great talking point for the kids, and that they could do a project on the old monks. She cleaned up the skull and brought it into class. The kids loved it and thought it was really cool. Now when you find human remains you have to inform the authorities, so she knew that in a few days someone would be along to collect the skull, but she was surprised when two men in full hazmat suits turned up. Turned out that the skull was from a plague pit where victims of the Black Death were dumped. I was living in Michigan and it was a small population town but had miles and miles of orchard and farming fields, so there were a lot of legal and illegal immigrants that would come there for work. As in, the schools were 75% Hispanic. One day in high school we had a show and tell, so to speak, and the last kid showed us his fake green card. Everyone looked like this when he made the confession. It was honestly a heartbreaking story when he finished, and the teacher was just kind of defeated. She was literally that meme of the stick figure holding up a finger and then realizing they don't have any words and just resign. But to be fair, we all kept that shit to ourselves. No one spoke of it again like real MVPs, and it really kind of brought the whole class together. It was an insanely small school and there was barely about 10 of us in that class. We all agreed to keep it between each other. This was back in 2006, if you're wondering. Not for show and tell, but a student once brought an airsoft gun that resembled a real handgun, no orange marking to show it was fake, to be used as a prop for a presentation and skit on prohibition. He knew enough about how controversial a prop it was that he brought it in and straight to me to keep locked in my cabinet or desk until the presentation before school started. I was honest and kept my cool, said such a replica was not allowed on school campus and would have to call in admin, who came and discreetly picked it up. He realized he screwed up, but being a good kid who had just wanted an A, playing Al Capone in a skit on bootlegging, was compliant in everything requested of him. It went to district to decide the merits of the case and he was suspended for 5 days as opposed to expelled.